Should we get started? All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Sharif Shaalan, so I have to look up at my name. I'm the CEO and founder of Agile Cloud Consulting. I'm a six-time Salesforce MVP. I have 10 certifications. The topic today is from food truck chef to Salesforce architect. So I'm going to share kind of my journey with you, how I started. This quote, I know Stephanie likes a lot of quotes, so here's another one, Stephanie. So this is kind of the theme of the talk, which is experience is not what happens to a person, it's what a person does with what happens to him or her. So this kind of, I think captures the point I'm trying to get across today, in that anything you do throughout your career, whether it's Salesforce or not, is going to help you build some kind of skill that's going to help you down the line and that you can build upon in your career. So, within my career, I think I held almost every position there is in the ecosystem, probably besides hardcore developer. I did do some development, but I'm not a David Liu when it comes to development. I'll go through each one of these and kind of tell you my journey and how these were all steps that helped build, where I got to today, which is owning my own company. So starting out, I graduated in 2001 from Rutgers University. I had a business management degree, and I wasn't technical at all. There was, nothing technical. Going to Rutgers University, I learned, these lessons: how to meet deadlines, how to work with teams on group projects, how to finish, right? How to just finish what you started. And like I said, there was no technical experience. This was all just business management in 2001. Growing up, we had a lunch truck business, which was a food business. So for 20 years, I was cooking falafels and shawarmas and everything. So we had a lunch truck at an airport, and this actually was one of the building blocks that helped me along the way. One of the things this taught me is how to handle pressure. So when you're cooking, 50 sandwiches for 50 construction workers, and they all want it in 10 minutes, that beats any go live. So there's really, it taught me how to handle pressure, how to run your own business, customer service, just working within a family business, working long hours, so 12 hours, 16 hours. I'm Arab, so we started working at like 9 years old. So. And then having multiple jobs. When I was working on the lunch truck, I always had sales jobs. So I have a sales background, along with what I was doing for the family business. In 2005, I probably had like $1,000 to my name, and my brother and we decided to kind of quit our jobs. And by then we had sold the business, and I moved to Cairo, where I'm from originally, and I studied classical Arabic for a year. And that was a great experience. And some of the things that taught me were how to take risks. So at that point, I just decided to leave and just go study Arabic. How to take a break from things. And then, of course, I got my chess game up because my brother was with me, and I was beating him in chess every day. So fast forward, when I got back from Egypt, 2007 to 2009, I went back into sales. I'd always been, very good at sales. Which definitely helped my Salesforce career in building systems and just showing people, what we need to do with business process, that kind of stuff. So in 2007, I held a few sales jobs. I was always a top seller. And what I learned is, what a sales rep needs to be successful and how to use Salesforce as an end user. So that was my first introduction into Salesforce, using it as a regular sales user. In 2009, I actually got promoted in the same job to a sales trainer, and that's how I became kind of an accidental admin. So the same day I became the trainer, for some reason the Salesforce admin quit, and the CEO called me into the office and said, "You're the Salesforce admin now." So that's how I got into the Salesforce world. So from that point forward, 2010, I was also the CEO pulled me into the office and kind of showed me the whole business, the ins and outs and everything, and said he wants me to build the sales team. So I was the trainer, I was the admin, and I was also the head of the sales operation. And within the next 2 years, I increased sales from like 200,000 to 1.8 million. And the CEO of that company became my mentor, and he showed me a lot of business process stuff. And that's something I definitely recommend to everybody: is find a mentor, find somebody that can help you out. My mentor is actually worth $1.8 billion now, so I'm trying to get money from him. So in 2010, I learned how to build and configure Salesforce by breaking their org and figuring it out on as I worked through it. How to run a sales operation, a call center. So we expanded from 12 people when I started to 200 people, and we just had a kind of a boiler room kind of set up, predictive dialers, that kind of stuff. And then 2010 is when I got my first cert. So I got my first admin cert, and once I got that cert, people just started, calling me on LinkedIn, sending me messages. They wanted me to set up their Salesforce instance. So at that point, actually, just take a step back. Before I got my cert, the CEO made a big mistake. He sent me to Dreamforce. So at that point, I kind of opened my eyes to the ecosystem. And back then, there was no Trailhead, so I went back and I printed out the 5,000-page, help and Salesforce help, and that's how I studied for my exam. 2011, I decided to start my own company. So I went to the CEO and I told him, I'm about to start my own company, so you can either be my client or I could leave. And luckily, he decided to become my client, so he was one of my first clients. And then I had two other, pretty good sales implementations going. In 2012, so one of my clients was a company called Round Corner. You may have heard of them. They just got acquired by Salesforce in January. They were one of my clients, and I went in to do a deal for them, which was like a $15,000 deal, and I sold the customer on a $1 million implementation. So they wanted me to actually do the implementation. So at that point, I decided to, they wanted to bring me on, so they gave me a good offer. At the same time, I said, they were a nonprofit, they were enterprise nonprofit, so I told them I'll come and work for you and do this implementation, but at the same time, I'm going to keep my own company and do for-profit implementations on the side, like smaller implementations. So I always had Agile going, but I did stay with Round Corner until they got acquired in January. We'll get to that in a second. In 2013, I became a product manager for an events management app, also with Round Corner. That was kind of a big year for me. So I was working with really big clients. I did implementations for like Girl Scouts of America, Salvation Army, Child Fund. I worked with a lot of the top nonprofit enterprise. In 2013, I was doing a project for St. Jude's Hospital, and I learned a lot on that project. So this is where I got introduced to the Agile methodology, leading Scrum teams, becoming a Scrum Master. That same year, I answered about 10,000 questions on the Salesforce community. By then, I felt, I was sharp enough to kind of give back because I had always gone to the community to ask. So I just started answering and kind of got addicted to it. And that same year, I became an MVP. That same year, my daughter was born. That's probably why I was answering 10,000 questions. I was up all night. And that same year, I got my advanced admin cert and my Sales Cloud consultant cert. 2014, I was promoted from a senior consultant to a principal consultant. And actually, 2014, this is when I worked on the Girl Scouts project. So here, I went from, where before I was, managing kind of smaller teams. I was managing full teams of developers, VAs, solution architects, and running whole projects end to end. 2015, I was promoted to a solution architect. So here I got a lot of experience in, working on creative solutions on the platform, working around limitations, things like that. Working on multiple projects instead of one project. So at this point, I was allocated to different projects. So I learned how to kind of split my time and, work on all these different projects. And then I got the Service Cloud cert that year. So as you see, I kind of space out my certs. I try to get at least one every year, so kind of keep it consistent. 2016, I was promoted to a technical architect. So here, I was working with large data volume, uploading. How do we make 50 million opportunities work in an org, that kind of stuff, making sure everything is scalable. architecture best practices. And that year, I got my development lifecycle and deployment manager cert, as well as my platform app builder cert. And I think that's when they took away my dev cert, the old dev cert. 2017-18, so there I was promoted to the manager of technical architects. So for Round Corner, I led all of the technical and solution architects and worked on multiple projects. Throughout this whole time, I still had my company, Agile Cloud, and I was doing just kind of small implementations on the side with, for-profit stuff. So I was glad I worked that into my contract. So in 2017-18, I was managing a team of architects, kind of working more now on, still working on a lot of big projects, working on contracting, SOWs, resource management, so managing, full dev teams, allocating resources across different projects. And that year I got 3 certs. So I got Community Cloud Consultant, Sharing and Visibility Designer, and the Data Architecture and Management cert. And then in 2019, this year, so this year, Round Corner got acquired by Salesforce. Salesforce.org gave me a nice offer to come over to Salesforce, but I wasn't ready to lose my MVP title yet, so so I decided to continue with Agile and kind of scale up. So now we have, about 10 to 20 people that I have working on different projects. I have my, offshore development teams that I work with. So Agile Cloud Consulting, we're a registered partner. And a few of the things that I work on now are the App Exchange podcast. So I do that with Shiv from Daysworks, if any of you are familiar with him. I also recently started the first Salesforce comic strip. So every Sunday we put out a comic, and I actually have some printed out, so I'll put them out here afterwards if anybody wants to check them out. And then also this year I got the Nonprofit Cloud Consultant cert. So that was the last cert I got. So still working on, trying to do at least like 1 to 2 certifications a year, and keeping it consistent. So some of the key takeaways here are, first of all, there's no such thing as a bad experience. So, anything you do in your life, no matter, what kind of work you do, whether it's Salesforce or not, you could build some kind of skill that you're going to use in the future and just build on it. So always kind of be happy with what you do, and, everything is a teachable moment, really. The second one here, this is something my wife always says to my daughter. So if you're going to say anything, make sure it's kind, true, and necessary. So I thought that kind of applied to us adults also. So I've always, especially dealing with, my teams, my offshore teams, everybody, I always make sure that, I'm very, treat everybody in a good way. It's always seemed to work for me. The best skill to develop for, in my opinion, is execution. So throughout my career, it doesn't matter if, if you're the most technical person or if you're not technical at all, but if you get the skill to know how to get things done, where, somebody can give you a task and you can use your resources, you can call people, you go to Success Community, you can do whatever you have to do to get it done. I find that to be the most useful skill out there, really, is just if somebody knows they can give you something and you can get it done, it doesn't really matter if you're super technical or you're not. You just, having that execution is what everybody looks for when they're trying to hire people. And then also, not on here, is, make sure you get a mentor, because I found that very important for myself. So, when my mentor, the CEO of the company I was working with, kind of pulled me in the room, showed me everything, and, he challenged me and gave me, very hard tasks to do and just kind of work with me, and that really helped me out. So, in your career, just identify somebody that you feel can help you and get a mentor, because it could help you avoid all the pitfalls they avoided. So I'm working with my mentor now to see how I could be a billionaire as well. And I think that's all I have today. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody have any questions, or are you guys good? So I'll put out the Agile Cloud comic strip over here if you guys want to take one on your way out and check it out. We put it out every Sunday. You'll like it. It's all Salesforce-based comics, and it's the first one. So when people start copying me, you'll know where it started. Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, so I led the implementation for Girl Scouts, and there were some challenging, I probably can't divulge too much information, but there were some challenging things with the platform that we had to get around, and so I used some creativity to get around them, and for probably 6 months to a year of my life, I was on the phone every day with like 20, so like literally 20 like CPAs, Salesforce architects, and just checking everything I did, and making sure that the solution I put in place was something that could be done and wasn't the right solution. And I think that was kind of a fork in the road for me, because it could have either been like, all right, you messed everything up, get out of here, or luckily they came back after 6 months and said everything I did was right. So it was a hard experience, just kind of being on the phone with all these architects every day, and the pressure was on, right? It was like having the light on you in interrogation, like, why did you do this, why did you do that? So yeah, that was a good experience. And just overall, working around corner and being exposed to all of the enterprise level nonprofits, and just the nonprofit data model, working with that for 8 years, going back to agile now, and concentrating fully on agile. I'll still do nonprofit and higher ed implementations, but regular Sales Cloud implementations are like a piece of cake now, compared to to that complexity. So.